Alright, what's up guys? Today I just wanted to do something a little bit new. So I started coaching a team tonight. We're very, very new to each other. I'm not very integrated, but our first match was tonight, and we had a best out of 3, and I just want to take you guys through the drafts that I did for this team. So game 1, we're on red side here. So not really going to talk about bans a whole lot because it's a pretty mid-level league. A lot of these bans, especially from the other team, are target bans at solo queue pools, not really competitive based bans here. Anyways, the enemy team first picks Amumu, which is really, really strange. I think his best role is jungle, but they ended up picking him support, which is really weird. So the first thing to note here is that Amumu is a dive champion. He can only go in, right? So we want champions that are good into going in. Now keep in mind, I'm very new to this team. I don't know champion pools. I'm asking a lot of questions about our pools, about what we're comfortable playing. We're not comfortable playing Xayah, so we couldn't pick Xayah. Anyways, I first rotate Tristana Poppy. Tristana's obviously super, super strong. Premier mid laner right now. Technically, yes, a mid-bot flex. Scales really, really well. Also good into dive with her ultimate and her mobility resets. Poppy, same deal. She scales well. She's really, really good into dive. An actual anti-dive champion should make it very, very difficult for champs like Amumu and eventually Jarvan, and to some degree Jace, to play the game into hard engage. Enemy team second rotates Jace and Ziggs. Now this is really weird considering they just picked Amumu, right? Amumu wants to go in, Jace and Ziggs want to scale and poke around objectives, so this is a little bit contradictory. Yes, there is the idea that you can layer ultimates together with the Amumu and the Ziggs, but especially as a bot lane combo as well, it doesn't really mesh well together because Amumu, again, wants to hard dive, Ziggs rather, in the lane phase especially, just kind of wants to sit back, farm, and wave clear. So a little bit countering themes there. Then on R3, I go ahead and take the Varus. Ideally, I would have taken Xayah. Actually, no, I wouldn't have taken Xayah. I was going to take Xayah initially when I saw the Amumu, but as soon as they picked 2 poke champions, Xayah's off the table. She cannot play into poke, right? So we want something that's going to match the range, match the scaling. Varus is a decent option there. Ezreal was banned. We probably could have gone Ezreal in this situation as well, but we just decided to go for the Varus. My ADC was comfortable on it, so we just went ahead and picked it. Now, second rotation, second pick phase rather, is pretty interesting dynamic here because I wanted to save top pick for R5 because we want to preserve the Poppy flex as long as possible. So I was already eyeing a Soraka pick early on because we want 2 things. We want a way to counteract the poke, which healing over time does, and we also want a way to counteract the engage, which Soraka to a degree also does with her silence and obviously her healing. Soraka is also very difficult for dive champions to play against because of her ultimates. It's one of those champions that if the dive comp goes for her, the carries will kill the dive. If the dive goes for the carries, she'll just keep the carries alive. So it's a really difficult dynamic to play against Soraka in mid and late game teamfight situations. Last rotation, enemy team picks Jarvan and Kench. Now these are more on theme with frontline, short range, hard engage, and dive, and things like that. So the enemy team has done something pretty strange in my opinion, and that's they're pretty off theme, right? They have the Amumu, the J4, the Kench. They're very short ranged, they're very engage focused. They want to hard dive our backline, whereas Jace and Ziggs want to scale up and play with poke around objective fights. So pretty interesting dynamic for their team. I really think what they're going for is just layering ultimates, right? So that big wombo combo with a Jarvan ult, into an Amumu ult, into a massive Ziggs bomb and a shock blast, right? It's going to be a huge burst of damage. And honestly, we don't have a whole lot of counterplay to it. If they do land those abilities, what can we really do about it? It's going to come down to Poppy being able to play that disengage threat. Maybe a better pick for my team would have been Azir here to shove them away. More disengage focused champions. But with the Poppy, theoretically, we should be able to negate most of that engage, and I would also tell my team to stay spread out. If we're in the river fighting over a dragon, or if we're in the mid lane fighting over mid prio, stay spread out. Don't clump up so they can layer those big ultimates together. We want to stay spread out so we can, function as a comp, right? So it's a interesting dynamic there. On R5, I decided, okay, we needed a little more AP damage, a little more frontline, and Cho'Gath also provides a little more peel and disengage-oriented CC, which is very, very nice in this instance. So I was thinking about going Gwen into the front line of the tanks, which might have been better, but I think we definitely needed a little more front line in this game. So I think Cho'Gath was a solid choice. Definitely wasn't a Malphite angle. and we obviously banned the Ornn in second phase, so I think Cho is a pretty solid pick here. Overall, I'd actually say we are pretty happy here on red side because we have triple winning lane, right? We have double ranged into the Amumu in bot lane, so we'll have push with Soraka there. I like to favor the Tristana into the Jace matchup most of the time. It kind of depends on mid jungle presence, and then in top lane, it's gonna kind of be just a grasp stack farmer. But eventually Cho will reach a point where Kench can't really do anything to him, getting those Heartsteel stacks, the grasp stacks, and just scaling to a point where the poke isn't really going to affect him a lot, and he's going to be able to frontline very effectively. So this was the Game 1 draft. Now I want to go ahead and switch over to the Game 2 draft, which just happened. Now this is a bit of a different dynamic here. We wanted... The first game ended up to where the Jarvan was just kind of running over the game, and we were too focused on scaling because we didn't really have, like an early to mid to late bridge. I think in a higher level, more fundamentally sound league, that comp from game 1 would have worked out fine if we knew how to play it properly, but that didn't end up happening. So in this game, we end up taking a little bit more of an early game presence in topside and a little more map presence overall, with the ability to move around with the Rakan instead of a Soraka, right, who has to stick with the marksman the whole time. So we end up first picking Maokai. Our jungler's comfortable on it. Obviously, I think this champion is probably the best in the game right now. Super, super broken, just in general. Enemy team answers with Kai'Sa Leona. Pretty strong duo in the bot lane. Already they're building towards another dive-oriented comp. So what do we want? We want anti-dive. Maokai does have an anti-dive mode. He can play disengage with his ultimate, with his W, and the rest of his CC. So I go ahead and take Rakan and Aphelios. I wanted to take Zyrakan, but again, my ADC was not comfortable on it, so we avoided that. I asked if he was comfortable with Aphelios. He said yes, but it's like kind of his mid-level ADC here. Aphelios is obviously a very challenging champion to play, so we'll see how that ends up going. But the idea here is that we have champions that thrive against champions that dive, right? Aphelios, Rakan, they all want champions to come into them. Obviously, Rakan and Maokai have these different modes, but Aphelios especially wants champions to come into him. He's a really good stand your ground champion and is good into the dive. Enemy team on red side takes Viego for R3, which he also has a mode of going in, so also continuing with their very skirmish heavy dive team fight comp. On R4, they end up taking Lissandra, which is very, very strange. I think that they have a lot of AP. Even if Kai'Sa goes AD build, she is still mostly magic damage. So they have a lot of AP, giving us free Merc Tread purchases. So that is an interesting decision there in the draft phase. I also think Lissandra's just kind of useless. Yes, she has very, very good utility, strong utility, but she just doesn't do a lot of damage. I don't think there are definitely better options if they wanted to go more of a dive mid laner. Obviously, we banned the Neeko in second phase, considering that they wanted to go more of a dive-oriented team. But they can go things like Malphite mid lane. They can go, who even knows what else? They can go Orianna to have nice AoE ball follow-up and things like that. But the Lissandra pick can't do anyways. And then, like I was saying before, on last rotation, we go towards more of an early game style comp around topside with the Renekton and the Azir. So obviously, I know I'm adamantly against Renekton, but my top laner was begging me to pick it for him, and so we went ahead and did it. So our goal this game was to get top lane ahead and have him be able to bridge the rest of our scaling comp into the mid and late game, and to be able to actually reach team fight stage. Again, the Azir. We want champions that are anti-dive, good into the dive champions that they've picked, which Azir does. I was also hovering between an Annie pick and an Azir pick, but I thought even though Azir is much more challenging to play, I think that he provides a lot of needed damage for one, and utility, kite back, disengage, whatever you want to call it, anti-dive. So I think largely our comp on blue side is superior here. We have thematic counters and superior scaling across the board, with the exception of the Renekton pick. It is obviously out of place. It's pretty counterintuitive in terms of theme, but it's definitely an interesting dynamic here. If we can get the Renekton ahead into an early mid snowball, then he's going to be able to draw enough pressure to allow the rest of our team to scale up. That's kind of the idea, but of picking this champion, especially across the world and pro leagues right now, just in competitive. The whole idea of having an early, mid, strong champion to bridge the rest of your team into the scaling late game is a pretty common theme seen in competitive play these days. So this is going to be a pretty interesting game. I think the enemy team comp, finishing with Urgot too, is very, very random. Obviously, he's probably just used as a vacuum counter into the Renekton here, which is probably good, but on paper, in terms of the whole grand scheme of their comp, it doesn't really make much sense. I think their first three were pretty solid on theme, but the Lissandra and the Urgot kind of messed things up for them, and it's going to be an interesting vibe to see how they end up playing out objective fights and mid and late game situations, whereas it should be pretty clear on blue side what our goal is. So these were just the first two drafts that I did with this team. It's again in the very beginning stages of me being involved with this team. I'm still trying to get to know people and getting integrated with them, but it's very, very exciting, and I think that this is a good opportunity to showcase kind of how I go about drafting, new draft lessons that can come up, and how they actually practically play out inside of the game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'm going to go watch the rest of this game. Thanks for watching. See you next time.